I'm here.
Hi, Kathy. Welcome.
Hi, Kathy. Good to see you.
Well, thank you guys for inviting us in. I'm John Dreckney. I'm the CEO of the Merchant Advisory Group. Scott did a good job representing who we are. So let me just give you just a little bit of why we're here. And then Kathy's going to talk a little bit about why this is important to the Merchant Group. When you look at the merchants and how they run their businesses, you can see that digital ID touches so many different things that we do. And a lot of what we do sometimes is an assistance to the state. So in many of our locations, right, we're helping extend licenses, and whether that's fishing licenses or hunting licenses, in which we have to validate who that person is who's applying for those licenses. And being able to do that in a much more efficient manner is great. Or we're making sure those people who are coming to purchase age-restricted items, on whether that's alcohol or whether that's medicine or whether that's cigarettes, actually are abiding by the law, so that we can ensure that we're following those laws that are in the industry. Or whether it's somebody who's trying to validate purchases when it's restricted type purchases, like a WIC program, a Women, Infants and Children's program, and making sure that works. So really the validation of ID is throughout our business. And today we rely on our cashiers to have the knowledge to decipher what's presented to them is valid. And we would love to see that go to more of a digital electronic format. And so that it's not a judgment made by a clerk who may have just started, but instead an actual validation that happens based on the data that's been collected and put in place. And Kathy's going to go and talk about some of the things that are important to us for that to happen in a way which we can do it responsibly. We would tell you that the way payments have been developed probably gave merchants way too much information that they didn't need, and then caused us problems on how do we secure it and hold it secure. Where if it would have been developed properly, it would have been done in a way that really limited to what the merchant needed to actually complete transactions. And we want to make sure and be involved with that discussion around digital ID, so that it's done in a way that's the most respectful to our customers and the easiest for us to administer in a way that states would like us to. So Kathy, go ahead.
Thank you, John. So, Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for having us today. I am chairman of the MAG board and very proud of that role. I've been involved in the MAG for a number of years, and the MAG is the voice of the merchants, and we are working to make sure that as technology is developed and the world changes and consumers' payments choices change, that the merchants' needs are taken into account. And we applaud Wyoming for the work that you're doing today in regards to digital identification and technology. We think this is going to be very important in the future and will have a great impact on our business. So as the MAG, as we look at it, we would like to partner with you guys to help create the legal framework for our universal identification solution. Now, when we look at that, we view this as there's 6 components, from our view that would be involved in that. And one is identity certification. And you've heard Scott and John and a few others talk a little bit about identification and how that occurs today. That's related to the AMLs and the KYCs. You've got banks, you've got governments, you've got merchants who all do authentication and authorizations of knowing who that customer is that's wanting to make that transaction. So we think that's an important component of this. The second one is privacy. Privacy is important to every one of us today, and especially all of our consumers that shop in our stores as the merchants. And we want to make sure that we're protecting our consumers' privacy in the right way and making sure that it is used as how the customer wants to do that. So that's another component. The third one would be a universal identity, meaning that once the identity is established, then any merchant or entity that chooses to accept that digital identity and the consumer chooses to use it at that identity would be valid to be transacted there. So again, it's creating it not just for one merchant or one entity, but it's creating an identity that can be used across multiple entities. That's one of the things that will help drive adoption and give consumers confidence of being able to use this digital identity. The third one is unbundled identity, the fourth one is unbundled identity. And that's where it's going to come into play that there's components of that. And John spoke to this, excuse me, a moment ago when he was talking about consumers that use WIC. So it may be for a transaction that a consumer only wants to allow that merchant to know that this is the WIC payment that I'm going to transact with. It doesn't mean that they're going to allow anything else that's contained within that digital identity. So it's important to have the flexibility to have an unbundled identity to be used. The fifth one is free of charge. You've heard a little bit about this, but one of the things that is very difficult for merchants today is the cost that goes along with the payments in the electronic world. The debit and credit cards continue to be a very large pressure point on all merchants' business, especially in the e-commerce space today, where we have many more customers transacting that way. And having the ability to have a digital identity to conduct that transaction at free of charge would be beneficial not only for the consumer, but would also be beneficial for the economy and the merchant themselves. So having it free and not being able to charge and have different fees associated would be very important as well. And the sixth one is something John also spoke a little bit about, is transactional data. And this is very important as far as who owns that data and who has the right to do something with it. Again, as the consumer creates this identity and makes a partnership with the merchant, then they're going to want to say, this is how you can use my data. And that's within the merchant's rights because they've agreed to that with the consumer. Most companies, if not all companies today, have that concern about, the transactional data and what can be done with it. And the consumers, when they partner and sign up with those companies, they understand that. And they don't want their data used in any other way. So they don't want to know that somebody else can take their data that they've shared with their merchant and give it to someone else. So, when we look at this, there could be more, but these are the six things that we think are most important for establishing the legal framework around a universal solution for a digital identity. Thank you.